Good, man. As always, happy Friday. It's March, conference tournament, sweat and golf, as I'll be doing on the show for a long while. This is going to be an annual thing, but it's a fun day. There are games during the day for college basketball, and that certainly for me is a welcome sight. Makes everything better.
Yeah, that's for sure. We teased last week that the calendar had actually flipped to March, but I think officially it is now the time of year where we can get really excited because, as you said, we have games all day today, the entire weekend, and then certainly into next week with all the big conference tournaments coming. There's just an influx of basketball games, and it's the best time of year, in my opinion. I'm excited. I was told that we've moved up in the world. We have an official code that we can offer to our viewers. It is Awesemo Odds, one word. So enter that to get the best deal in town on the best site in town with the best projections, rankings, ownership projections, etc. So use that code and check everything out. So we wanted to get into just a quick weekend review as we've been doing the last few weeks before we get into the main course, which is going to be March Madness, of course. The first thing we wanted to hit on quickly is just kind of an NBA update as to where we are. Since we last spoke, I don't think the Lakers have won a game.
No.
I think playoff mode has been deactivated. Sounds like LeBron is going to be limiting minutes and maybe sitting on back-to-back. So how are you feeling about that wager, Ben?
Yeah, I would take 10 cents on the dollar. Yep. I mean, this was certainly in the range of outcomes. We did say that if it went bad, it would go real bad, and that we could see this happening. Obviously, complete swing and miss. It was ironically, they beat. We keep talking about this. That first game, they beat Houston, and it was like, oh man, this is great. They got Memphis, Phoenix coming up, and now you look back and just the chemistry obviously is caught up with them. I'm sure for you, I know you're a noted LeBron hater. Probably not the worst thing for me. It hurts to see him not even in the playoffs. What a disappointment.
It is pretty remarkable. I mean, I couldn't even have fathomed that it could fall apart this quickly.
It just, I mean, it snowballed. Obviously, his injury didn't help, but there's excuses, but at the same time, there's no excuse. Like you got to get in. And man, I will say, just from an NBA fan, I love the NBA. Kind of bummed just the Western Conference. It got out of control fast. It's basically locked. The Clippers and the Spurs just surged, and the Kings and the Lakers kind of fell by the wayside. We basically have it almost locked up. The East is a little more interesting. There's some teams jostling for position, but overall, I'm kind of going to die down until the playoffs, and then it's one of my favorite times of the year when the NBA playoffs get going for sure.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, it does seem like the Kings as well. I mean, they're such a young team. It was going to be tough for them to hang around and still compete for the 8 seed. I mean, I think they still have an outside chance, but they would really need the Spurs or the Clippers to falter, and it doesn't seem like, at least with the Clippers, they've found something even after trading Tobias. Like, they've been playing a lot better lately. Beat up on the Lakers, which I guess doesn't say much, but that was a nice win for them. Some other big wins the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, it seems like the 8 are kind of set. There'll definitely be some jockeying for position on the West. Certainly 3 through 6 or 7 are kind of interchangeable right now. You had the big OKC Portland game last night. Those teams are fighting. They're 4 or 5 right now. So it's an exciting time of the year for sure. I mean, we're going to focus on college hoops today, but wanted to touch a little bit on what the NBA has been doing the last week or so. Have you been following anything related to Antonio Brown?
Obviously, you've seen, he's on the move. I woke up this morning and I still don't have the full story. I've been watching golf where it was like, oh, he's going to the Bills, and then it turned out, I guess that wasn't exactly true. Now the Bills are saying that wasn't even that close to happening. As a Josh Allen super fan, I would have loved that. That would have been great. And then obviously on the drama side, just seeing AB up there would have been something. But other than that, it will be interesting to see where he lands. Some of the teams that I've seen floated, I don't want to say it doesn't make sense, but at the same time, I could see it ending pretty poorly.
It does seem like all the teams you hear about, the Raiders, obviously the Bills, just not an ideal scenario. The Steelers don't have a ton of incentive to trade him to a top team. certainly not in the conference. So it's interesting. I thought the Buffalo fit obviously was not great, but I was looking this morning, and the Bills' odds before it was debunked dropped from 100 to 1 to 60 to 1 to win the Super Bowl, which of course is just ludicrous. Like one player is not going to make that much of a difference. So I certainly would never advocate making that sort of wager. But just kind of interesting the teams that they've been talking to, or at least that's been leaked that they're interested in.
Yeah, we talked about that with Machado. Like some of the markets overreact wildly on the future side, especially in the NFL. Like AB, he'll help, of course, and if a team's possibly ready to win, yeah. But as much as I like the Bills, maybe young core, they're not going to be going anywhere for a while.
Yeah, that is for sure. That is for sure. So I guess we'll just kind of wait and see. They were saying they wanted to get a deal done today, so perhaps it'll get done while we're shooting the show. Perhaps we'll have some breaking news, later on. Our producer will keep track of that.
Josh will fill us in if we'll see, but it'll be interesting. Obviously, NFL is not on anyone's mind, but soon enough, it's the summer. Kind of take a backseat to the other sports, but then it'll be right around the corner.
Yeah, no doubt. So let's get into March Madness. Like we said, this is the most exciting time of year. For some people, even more exciting than, dare I say, like week one of the tournament, just because you have so many games right now. A lot of the smaller conference tournaments are starting or are in the semis this weekend, and then next week you just have an influx of games every day with all the big conference tournaments going on. So you really have just a ton of games. So I wanted to go into some of the smaller conference tournaments that are wrapping up this weekend. You wrote a great article that's on the site that kind of broke down a few of the smaller conferences. So I wanted to go through 5 or 6 of them, kind of give a brief update on what's going on in their tournament and just go through some of the games, some of the teams that are interesting, some of the top players, NBA prospects you might not have, seen play because they're on these smaller schools. The first conference I wanted to look at was the Big South. The semis are today, and it's one of the conferences where the teams actually host the games. So the higher seeds are an actual home team. So clearly an advantage there. You have Campbell, who is the 1 seed. They are playing today against Gardner-Webb, and Campbell is -3.5. They obviously have a stud who you wrote about. What are your thoughts on Chris Clemens? I know you're a big fan.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Do you have any thoughts on the game today?
So these teams, it's a weird tournament. I should clarify because in my article it could be a little ambiguous. The way the Big South works is whoever is the number 1 seed just hosts the entire tournament. So both games are at Campbell today.
Right.
So that was them and Radford tied for the league, and it was huge that they had the tiebreaker because they get the entire tournament at their gym. So I watched them play yesterday. They played Hampton. It was a competitive game back and forth, but they have a guy who he just passed Dougie McBuckets. He's now 5th all time in scoring. And I know it's Campbell. It's not elite competition, but that's just absurd. He's averaging 30 a game. Small guard, can shoot. Not that this is great info, but it's one of the strangest things if you haven't seen it. He shoots his free throws to the right of the line. So he's severely off-centered when he shoots like 90% from the line, but that's one of the weirdest things if you haven't seen it. It's a tough game today, no doubt about it. Gardner-Webb's pretty good. The other Radford, Charleston Southern, they're competitive games, but at the same time, they are home. No matter who they play, they have the best player on the court. I have a feeling that Campbell certainly can get to the finals here. It seems like them and Radford. I don't want to say it's a collision course where nothing can happen, but it's hard not to like the 2 favorites there.
It jumped out to me. It seemed like Campbell is kind of a short favorite at home, as the top team in the conference, and obviously with the best player on the court.
There is
seemed like a fishy line to you at all?
So both did. I had Campbell yesterday against Hampton. Again, the game was competitive. There's a lot of parity in these smaller conferences unless there's a juggernaut.
Yeah.
But I do think, being at home, that's going to help. Just, we'll see what fatigue does. Obviously, both of these teams played yesterday. But I'm with you, in a smaller conference, when you just have a guy that no one can really do much to stop him, and he does a good job. You would think if he's scoring 30 a game, he would just be shooting all the time. And of course he gets his, but he really is a smart player in the sense there's a lot of teams that just trap him automatically, and he's very keen to just give it up. And Campbell has enough other guys who can at least keep him honest, whether it's, stretching it with the three, a couple guys on the inside who aren't terrible.
Yeah, the other game, as you mentioned in the semis, is Charleston Southern against Radford. Radford is the defending champ. Radford is a 3-point favorite. Charleston Southern actually had a pretty big upset yesterday, beating Winthrop pretty convincingly. I think they were up the entire game, and at one point, 15 in the second half. I know I haven't seen Winthrop play, but I know they're a pretty good three-point shooting team. Do you think Charleston Southern has a shot at the upset here?
So if I had to pick one of the teams to go down, it would be Radford. Charleston Southern, I watched that game. That was another game early in the day, so I had nothing to do, and it was on the TV. They did look good. And there is something to be said, you don't want to play every day, but if you're on a run, you kind of do. It's the same in golf where it's like you want to just keep playing if you're in a zone. So Radford battled back. They had a slow start yesterday. They responded because they're a very good team. They've played some teams this year. They're not a complete joke of a team by any stretch. I will say that I expect a pretty hard-fought game. That spread seems pretty fair. I doubt I touched the game, to be honest. And then I would assume the winner would play Campbell in the finals. Yeah,
I was trying to find odds to win the tournament. I couldn't find it right away. I know for the other tournaments, we do have those odds. So, I'm assuming obviously Campbell is going to be a small favorite, and then Radford is going to be behind them. But, some interesting games. I mean, like you said, there's not a huge advantage, it seems, between the top team and, Gardner-Webb and Charleston Southern. They play each other multiple times in the season. That's always something to look at. What's also interesting that you touched on a lot in your article is something to keep in mind is, certainly in this conference, it's a one team, one bid conference for sure. Nobody is getting an at-large bid in this conference. Some other ones that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, there is the potential, and if the top team gets bounced, then all of a sudden you're looking at, two teams getting in. I don't think 3 is in the cards, but when you have a second team potentially getting in at large, that hurts the bubble teams from the big conferences, obviously.
For sure. There's a couple. I mean, Gonzaga is obviously the super prevalent one. They would get in. I mean, of course, if they lost. Now, they haven't even been close to being beaten in conference play. But if you're on the bubble, if you're a Temple or you're a Dayton, the last thing you want to see is someone beat Gonzaga and cause the WCC to get 2 bids instead of the 1.
Yeah, exactly. So something to keep in mind. The next small tournament, which is up your way, and I think we're contractually obligated to mention the Metro Atlantic Conference. Yeah. I don't have a ton of opinion on any of these teams because I can't say that I've seen any of them play this year. And I do watch a fair amount of college basketball. I did see that the 4 remaining teams, none of them have a winning record, which seems pretty hard to accomplish.
It's bad. That conference is one of the ones that I've seen here and there, particularly Iona, particularly Rider. So today's the quarters, and they've got there's just a lot of parity. So there's 2 games today, 2 games tomorrow. Then they whittle down to 4. You mentioned it. You're not going to find a team that's going to check all the boxes. It's a neutral site. The games are in Albany, New York. So yes. Some people, if you're Siena or someone, I guess that helps, but they're not drawing certainly home crowds or anything. It's wide open. There's some teams that play really methodical. Manhattan comes to mind, super slow pace, one of the slowest in the country. I would say that, and the lines would reflect this, Iona and Rider, the 2 best teams I've seen in that league, but at the same time, you're not going to see, if you break down who's beaten who, you're going to see a lot of confusion where bad teams have beat the best teams and good, there's just a lot of mixing and matching. So it's wide open. Actually, one of the tournaments, I think it's if you have a team, I wouldn't be afraid to just kind of if your book offers an open parlay, you can take a team, 3 days in a row and parlay them together. And if you think they can make a run, because I don't see anyone who's a clear favorite in that one.
Yeah, I think we're on the same boat, and I couldn't even find a line yet for the Iona game tonight.
I believe I got it listed here. Iona -7, total of 136 against St. Peter's, the old Peacocks. Like, these are teams. Again, it's not a lot of talent. No offense to these conferences. This is a 16 seed in my book. Whoever comes out of the Metro, you'll see Duke or Virginia just beating up on them probably.
Let's hope so with Virginia. We don't want to go down that road again.
I shouldn't say, right? Good point.
So be careful. All right, so we can quickly kind of move on from the Metro Atlantic. Let's talk about a fun conference, the Missouri Valley. Crazy wide open all season. Of course, Loyola Chicago is the defending champ. Obviously made that crazy run to the Final Four last year. They were the co-regular season champs with Drake. This tournament is in St. Louis. We got a bunch of games today. I guess first off, I know I don't want to step on your article. I know you wrote a little bit about Illinois State. How are you feeling about Illinois State?
So the way this is another conference. It's very jumbled. And what happened was Illinois State, they didn't have a great year, but they lost a tiebreaker, and they were forced to play last night. They played Evansville, who's the worst team. And I really liked Illinois State. I think they can make a run in this entire tournament. They got through last night. I expected them to beat Evansville. They did. And I think it's kind of an advantage that they got their feet wet. They saw the court. They're in Arch Madness. They're in tournament mode already. And now they get Drake, who is the second seed. So obviously it's a tough game. But if you look at the schedule, they swept Drake. They beat him twice. They beat him at Drake. They beat him in Illinois State as well. So there's no doubt that they can beat this team. The line reflects that it's only a couple points.
Yeah.
And I think this is a true toss-up game. So if you're looking for a dark horse team, they've got good bigs. They have a good point guard. Are they the best team? Obviously not, because when you're 9-9 in your conference, you're not. But there's no doubt that they can make a run here. And I'm glad that they're getting Drake rather than Loyola, who I think is the best team in the conference. So if they see them, it'll be down the road.
Yeah, I know Loyola, obviously everybody knows kind of their story from last year, but they are returning, their top scorers. They have a lot of guys coming back. So, definitely on the betting side, they're going to be more of a public team just because people know them now and people want to get on early, as opposed to last year when it kind of snuck up on people.
Sure.
What do you think about Southern Illinois? They're a team that's kind of hot right now. I know they've won 3 in a row. They beat Loyola recently by 10 points. They're the 3 seed. They're -2.5 tonight against Northern Iowa. Do you see them, with the chance to make a run in this tournament? And what about tonight?
Northern Iowa is one of the when I think of the Missouri Valley Conference, I usually think of Northern Iowa. To be honest, I remember them beating Kansas years ago. But Southern Illinois, to me, is one of the wild card teams. Them and Missouri State. They've had some really impressive wins. They've had some really ugly showings. And what you're going to see in this conference, if you do watch these games, is almost every team, in my opinion, is offensively challenged. They can dig in. They play very solid defense, but a lot of them just don't have shooting. And when you do that and the games are played in the 50s, it's just very high variance because a couple shots fall. So I wouldn't expect the most aesthetically pleasing game tonight. Grind it out, no doubt. They're going to get, if they survive, most likely they'll be playing, they could get Loyola Chicago in the next round. Someone's going to have to go through them. So I don't hate it. Them and Missouri State, like I said, those are teams I've certainly looked at. But to me, Illinois State, I got them at 16-1. They did have to play last night, and they were fortunate in some ways to get through. They comfortably won at the end, but it was a close game. I think that Illinois State is the team for me if you're looking for a very dark horse, possible, out of nowhere team to make a run.
Yeah, and like you said, playing all these days in a row, certainly can be a negative just from a fatigue standpoint and game planning, but there are a lot of instances where teams just get hot and playing every day, you kind of just ride that momentum. Like it happens all the time where a dark horse, like even in the bigger conference tournaments, will win like 4 games in 4 days, and all of a sudden they're in the finals.
When UConn made those runs, like with Kemba,
exactly.
It's certainly, and I worry about that in day 4. This is day 2 for them. I think it's an advantage. They played, Drake sat. If they get to the finals, they may be out of gas, especially if they have to get an overtime game somewhere. That could be a serious problem. But, I'm not going to worry about that's a problem down the road. And if I have a 16-1 ticket, I'll certainly probably look to, hedge that at the end there if they can make it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I like Southern tonight, and I know we talked about that. Illinois State, I think I'm on board with you. I've seen them play a few times, and I think they've got a great chance to beat Drake tonight, and certainly a shot to make a run at this. Loyola, I think I also like tonight. They're laying 6.5 against Valpo. It's a really fun conference, like you said. It's super wide open. It was bunched together, I think, the entire season, so it should make for a pretty exciting tournament. This is also one where it's going to be a one-team, a one-bid conference. Nobody's getting in at large from this conference, so whoever wins this tournament will be in the only team in.
For sure. And I just think, you mentioned this, and I've been doing this during the year. Loyola, and they're a good team, but they're inflated perpetually because of that run. People see them, and people have seen them, and it's just not the same team. And they were on a run. They were certainly playing their best basketball at the right time last year. So I just have a feeling, if you told me I had to take Loyola or the field, I would take the field in this situation. I think there's plenty of teams that can knock them off here.
Yeah, same here. And you're right. I mean, these lines are going to be slightly inflated, I think, for Loyola. And any time you can recognize that, I mean, this just provides an opportunity usually to bet against them. Today, I don't know about Valpo, whether I want to get on that side of the game.
That's a little dicey.
Yeah, but going forward, certainly if they do run into either Illinois State or Southern Illinois, like that's something to keep an eye on. Like it may be inflated. I mean, even 1 point, 1.5 points, like is a significant difference when you're talking about teams that are really bunched together all season.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm excited to see what happens in that tournament. Watch those games. The next one I wanted to hit on is the Ohio Valley Conference. They play at Evansville, Indiana. Obviously, this conference is very top heavy. Has a couple really good teams at the top with Belmont and then Murray State. Obviously, we have a stud player, to say the least, at Murray State. What are your thoughts? We've got 2 games. The top 2 seeds had double byes to get into the semis, which is today, which is, like I said, Belmont and Murray State. What are your thoughts kind of on those 2 teams and just the conference in general?
Super interesting conference. Obviously, yeah, Murray State has, Chris Clemens is awesome at Campbell. I love watching him play. John Morant is going to be a top pick in the NBA draft. He's going to be projected to be very good at the next level. There's a big difference there. This is a fun one. I watched Jacksonville State last night and got into a tussle with Tennessee Martin that should not have been close. They ended up waking up in the second half, winning pretty comfortably. Austin Peay got through. The other 2, resting, ready to go. I'll say this. I've seen more Ohio Valley basketball than most. I like both underdogs here. I know Belmont and Murray State, very solid teams. There's no doubt about it. But Jacksonville State smoked Murray State during the year. They've got bigs that Murray State will struggle with. If they can contain Morant, I could see them having. You hear that echo? I could see that having a pretty big effect to disrupt them.
Yeah, so the lines for the games today, what I'm seeing is Belmont is a 7.5 point favorite against Austin Peay.
Whoa, hold up.
Yeah. You got some. You sound like a robot.
Uh-oh.
You have another window open with this video or something? You've got a horrible echo right now. Enough so that I felt like I needed to say something.
Yeah.
I will close all my windows. How about now?
I think sounds good. All right, back in business.
There we go.
Yeah, I was just like I said, Murray State, they clearly have the best player on the court, but Jacksonville State is battle tested, and Austin Peay on the other side, they have a player as well in Terry who, he's not Ja Morant. I'm not saying that, but he's a combo guard who Belmont will struggle with. Now, Belmont shoots, as they always do. They're a great three-point shooting team, and that's very dangerous. But neutral court games, you're getting 7.5 with Austin Peay, 5.5 with Jacksonville State. I expect these as toss-up games. I'm not saying they both win, but if you're going to give me a handful of points, I'll take the dogs in both of them.
Yeah, they're getting, like, I think as I was trying to say, Austin Peay is getting 7.5, and then Jacksonville State is getting 4.5 points. So definitely with Austin Peay, I do like that a lot. What are your thoughts as to Belmont? So they do have a shot at getting an at-large bid if they do lose in this tournament. They have some pretty good non-conference wins. They beat UCLA. They beat Western Kentucky. They did beat Murray State earlier in the season on the road. They have a pretty good resume, but with these, these smaller conferences, you just never know what the committee is going to do.
I have a feeling it's I don't even want to say long shot. I don't think there's a path for them to grab an at-large, to be honest. They're close, but there's too many other teams that will just have opportunities, because Belmont really, they only have one. I'll put it like this: if they win both games, they're automatically in. So obviously, they either lose tonight and there's no chance, or they win tonight and then they lose in the finals, and that's their only chances to improve their resume. There's so many big conferences that haven't started. Even teams that may not grab an at-large, if someone gets to the finals, I have a feeling you're going to see people hurdle Belmont. So they have their shot. They need to beat Austin Peay today and either Murray or Jacksonville State tomorrow. And those are two impressive wins. And, they'll be a high seed, but it's certainly not a team I would like to see if I was a big school. They're always dangerous.
Yeah, I guess the scenario would be, like you said, they have to win today. And then if they were to lose to Murray State, tomorrow,
overtime,
like in a tough game, like, is that enough to get in? They certainly would be on the bubble, whether that's in or out, who knows, but interesting though.
It is. Obviously Murray State, another team, like, I would love to see Ja Morant in the tournament.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. I don't think they have enough. They need to win these games, and they certainly can. I'm not saying that these teams are very good, but they're, even for people that I think watch some college basketball, if you do a quick glance at the OVC, you say, oh, wow, they got two really good teams. They have four really good teams. Austin Peay and Jacksonville State for this conference are very, very quality teams. I think that'll show tonight.
And that alone, definitely makes me lean towards, the dogs. The teams are both very good. If you can get 7.5 on a neutral floor, that's pretty appealing to me. Certainly with Austin Peay tonight, I think I'm going to be on that, like you said. So I'll be curious to see how Austin Peay comes out in that game. And then, with Jacksonville State and Murray State, that's another one, like we've said, where I think we both, are leaning the dog. I think Murray State gets a lot of publicity because of Ja Morant, obviously. I don't know how great of a team they are otherwise. It's one of those teams where you just hear about the star player. Not quite like LSU with Ben Simmons. I mean, that team was terrible, but like a similar scenario, I feel like.
Yeah, there's been some bad ones. The Fultz Washington team was like the worst team I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's up there. I think that LSU team was pretty bad as well, but
bad.
That Fultz team was awful.
It's like I said, it'll be, Austin Peay in particular, not that they're playing Murray tonight, but they lost to them twice, and you look and you think, and they were in both games. One should have went to overtime. The other got away from them late. They can beat anybody. There's no doubt about it. And Belmont, if this was, as we talked about, this is why I would always encourage you to check out the article and sign up for Slack, because this is a lot of the stuff we talk about. This is the importance of knowing the format. If these games were in Belmont and in Murray State, I would certainly be singing a different tune. That would be a lot tougher spot for these underdogs.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's key. It's crucial, really, to understand how each tournament differs, with seeding and home court and neutral court, and where the neutral court is, because sometimes that neutral court doesn't seem so neutral.
Yeah, that's right.
All right, so we've got a lot to look forward to then with these couple of matchups in the Ohio Valley. Let's move into the Southern Conference, which plays their first round is today. They play at neutral site Asheville, North Carolina. The games today aren't super exciting. You have Western Carolina against VMI, and then Samford against Citadel. But you have, Wofford obviously in this conference, and that's a team that everybody's been talking about. Kind of, what are your thoughts in general, I guess, on the conference and Wofford? And what do you think about Furman? That's a team that I've been looking at a little bit.
The old Paladins. Yeah, this is the conference I'm actually most excited to talk about, because again, a lot of people haven't seen them, and we just talked about, could Belmont get in? Maybe if Wofford loses, they're going to get in. They are undefeated in the conference. They have played good teams. North Carolina went there early, and they beat them, but Wofford put up a good fight. They played Mississippi State. They're a battle-tested team. Fletcher McGee, super underrated player, and they've taken every punch. This league, it is, to me, really impressive that they did not get tripped up, because there's some good teams. You mentioned Furman. Furman beat Villanova, just for reference, and I know it's college basketball, things happen, but Furman is a solid team. There's no doubt about it. I'm going to throw one more out. UNCG. UNC Greensboro's another really good team. They can get hot from three, have some good bigs that can do some damage. It's going to be a competitive league. Obviously today, these are the first round teams. I would be stunned to see any of them make any lasting damage. If I had to give you one, Samford has shown that they can beat some of these top tier teams. They've tussled with some of the better teams in the league. But it's just a very daunting task, because you're going to have to beat multiple. So I think if you're looking to bet this conference, I can't really, I have the odds in front of me. You have Wofford as basically an even money favorite to win the tournament. Yeah. I don't think I can go there. If it was me, I would probably take a stab with someone like Furman or UNCG and hope that, they only see Wofford in the finals and can get on a run. It's not like teams haven't had their chances. I've seen Wofford play. They're very good. They've won some games in overtime. They've won some games late. They're not invincible by any stretch.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Wofford only has 4 losses on the season, and you mentioned 2 of them, which is Carolina and Mississippi State. The other 2 of those 4 are Oklahoma and Kansas. So they played a pretty legit non-conference schedule just based on those games alone, and to be where they are, clearly they're going to be getting in. So all these bubble teams definitely want Wofford to win the tournament. If they do stumble, then you're looking at 2 teams from this conference getting in. Absolutely. Yeah. So I was looking at the futures as well. Like, it's tough. I mean, Furman, you can get 3-1. UNCG is at about 5.5 to 1. Beyond that, you got some real big long shots.
This is another one where, and I do this sometimes, and it's hard to conceptually think about it, and there's a lot of unknowns, but instead of betting that future, if your book offers an open parlay, you can just say, I'm going to open a 4-team open parlay and just bet that team money line 4 days. And if you think they're going to get Wofford, your payoff might be better than 3.5 to 1. I would anticipate that it would be, just because they're going to be a dog to Wofford in that game alone. So that is a way, it's important to kind of shop within your options if you like a bet. It's not just, let me take this future automatically.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. Something that we like talking about is the conceptual, ideas behind betting and ways you can gain an edge where, the odds are just perpetually stacked against you betting on sports. Doing the open parlay is an interesting way to do it. I mean, most people will say that, betting a team, to win 4 times, money line is probably better than just parlaying 4 teams. You have different options to hedge, throughout that where you may not, if you're just parlaying. Those open parlays are interesting and something, I want to delve into a little bit more when we have, more time, and we can, kind of talk about the theories behind it.
For sure. I like to do that in this type of setting, just because you can see I've been in situations where I've had a future in a conference tournament, and I just felt they were out of gas in the last game. And of course you have some options to hedge, But if you have an open parlay, it's not like you need to take them again. You can say, you know what, I'm going to bank my 3. I'll look elsewhere for that last game. It just gives you a little more flexibility.
Yeah, exactly. So I do like that. It's a good option, and like you said, it really is exploring your different options. Wherever you're making your wagers, and that's also another reason to have accounts at different places. You can line shop. You can see what options are available at some books that aren't available at others. You have to be aggressive and kind of line shopping to just gain any small edge that you can. It's just so hard to win consistently otherwise.
No doubt about it.
All right, so why don't we? I'm excited about the Southern Conference as well. Like you said, I don't think a lot of people are too keen on watching, first round Southern Conference action, but I'll be checking it out today.
Why not?
And certainly into the weekend. The last one we've alluded to earlier. Obviously, you have a huge team involved. It's the West Coast Conference with Gonzaga. They play in Vegas. You've got the top 2 seeds, which is Gonzaga and St. Mary's. They get buys into the semis. The second round is today. You have Pepperdine playing Loyola Marymount, and then you have San Diego against Santa Clara. Obviously, Gonzaga is the team to talk about. Obviously, like you said, they're getting in, no question. St. Mary's, you think they have any shot at an at-large, or is that just too far-fetched?
Yeah. They're a little down this year. They're always Gonzaga's challenge. BYU's not great either. The team to me, and I'm not saying this team beats Gonzaga, Loyola Marymount is a team that I think is really underrated. They have a senior-led point guard, one of the best players in the entire conference in Bateman. And when you have that, Gonzaga just overpowers you with talent. They can beat anyone else. Obviously, San Francisco is pretty good. St. Mary's still talented, not nearly as good as they normally are. But Loyola today, they get certainly a winnable game against Pepperdine. I think they should not cruise, but they should handle this. It's only 4.5. I actually thought it'd be, maybe 6, 7. And then they'll have a tough opponent tomorrow, but I wouldn't put it past them to, if they go out, I think it'll be at the hands of Gonzaga. I'll put it to you like that. I don't think they can beat Gonzaga, but I think they could beat any other team in this conference.
Can anybody, obviously anybody can, but is there a team you think that's best suited to knock off Gonzaga?
So they haven't even been, they've been tested at halftime, and then they've come out and they really haven't had a close game.
Yeah.
The team that I think could give them the most trouble would be San Francisco. Kind of a funky style. They've got some interesting matchups. It's just Gonzaga is really, it's just overpowering in terms of talent. They're a little banged up. Thiele's got a bad foot, but Hachimura is their big man. He's a matchup nightmare for anyone in that conference. So I think it would be a tall task for anybody to even give them a game in the tournament.
Yeah, as much as I want to look at some of these.
I'd love to. Yeah, I can't do it. It's hard to imagine them going down.
Yeah, at some point, like the odds seem great, but there's a reason, right, that these teams are such big long shots. That goes without saying. But sometimes you have to remind yourself that you can't just throw money away at crazy futures.
It's tempting, but
it's always tempting.
I'm with you.
Yeah, so I guess not a lot of intrigue. I want to see how St. Mary's plays. I don't think they really have a chance either at an at-large bid. It's one of their more down years, certainly of this last kind of 5-6 year stretch where they've been pretty competitive with Gonzaga throughout that time, but I just haven't seen them play that well this season. Even they're at 11-1 to win the tournament. It's so hard to envision them beating Gonzaga.
It's tough. Gonzaga is going to lock down a 1 seed probably if they smoke through this. And yeah, it's like I said, I actually think that St. Mary's would be not towards the bottom, but they are not near the top for me of the team that would knock off Gonzaga in my book. I don't see them really doing much, to be honest.
Yeah, that's like all I need to hear, really.
Yeah,
I wasn't buying them to begin with.
Nah.
So that kind of confirms that. Are there any non-conference tournament games that you've looked at this weekend? The big conferences kind of wrapping up their regular season. Is there anything that jumped out to you I mean, obviously with Duke, you know, Zion coming back, you know, everybody's going to be looking at that. You know, all of those conference tournaments will start up next week, Thursday, Friday. You know, we'll talk a lot about those big conferences on the show next week. Is there anything you have your eye on until then in those conferences?
You know, I think obviously the big game tomorrow, Duke and UNC play again in Chapel Hill. And I'll say this, if Zion sits, and I expect him to sit, I like Duke in the game if he sits, which is a little counterintuitive, but I think everybody has just, you know, and Duke has struggled. They almost lost to Wake Forest at home, which is like very embarrassing. I just have a feeling they put together a very solid effort, and obviously they still have Barrett, they still have Reddish. Zion will be coming back. I'm not sure it's tomorrow, so you're going to be getting a boatload of points with them on the road with their recent form and just the way they've played. I wouldn't be stunned to see Duke put together a pretty solid effort. I still think Virginia's the best team. I'm going to take that to my grave. Hopefully they'll get another crack at Duke, but that's really the only game. And, you know, a lot of teams, they're big games, no doubt. Temple is trying to secure a bid. They took a big step last night. Overall, though, I think everyone's kind of just ready for next week and to get going for the tournaments.
Yeah, you totally read my mind, though. If I really like Duke, especially without Zion, because, you know, if Zion plays, you know, everybody's going to be on them. They're going to get, you know, fewer points than they would otherwise. And, you know, they certainly want to get revenge from the game, you know, a couple of weeks ago when Carolina just, you know, took it to them. So it seems like a really good spot, but I do think it's a little bit better and maybe sharper if Zion doesn't play, like you said, which doesn't seem
it's weird, right?
Yeah, it seems completely counterintuitive, but you want to get kind of the public off of Duke to get the most value, and that seems like maybe the only way that could happen. Duke is always going to be a public team, but
if Zion comes back, there's almost no chance that I bet Duke because the line is going to drastically. That would be the worst case because there's a real chance he comes back and he plays like 15 minutes and we don't even know about it.
Yeah. So what do you think his actual effect on the line would be? I mean, is it more than like 2 points?
I have a feeling it would. And I mean, I don't think his true effect, you know, obviously there's a lot of intricacies, but I think the public would overreact and that's what would kill the value. And I'll just say this again, I'm not a big Duke guy, but there's a huge difference between losing a guy on the fly. You know, that game got away from them at home. It was a shock. If they're going to know if he's playing, you know, they know right now. So they will come in tomorrow focused. And North Carolina's playing very well, there's no doubt. But I have a feeling that Duke tries to level the score on the road.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page with that.
That's shocking. I did not think that you would have also thought, because it's a really weird thought, as you just said. Like, very odd to go Zion-less Duke the way they've been playing.
Yeah. Well, I think it just, you know, you're trying to read the market and you know there's going to be that overreaction, especially with Duke and especially with Zion. Like, it's just the nature of the beast with both of them.
For sure.
That line is going to move significantly. So, I'm going to be looking out to see what kind of movement happens, assuming he does play. I mean, we're both hoping that he doesn't play. Just for the opportunity. I mean, I want him to play in the tournament because I just want to see him play because he's so special, but I don't need him to play tomorrow.
Absolutely. I concur.
Excellent. Well, why don't we talk just kind of real briefly. Let's hit up golf. You have the Arnold Palmer this weekend. How are things looking for you? Are there any futures? I know we've talked about Tommy Fleetwood, I think, for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, and he's finally at the top of the leaderboard, but you know, the future price obviously isn't that great for him. Is there anybody that you see near the top that might make a charge that you like?
So again, I like doing the show at this time because it's for golf specifically. It's a fun time. You know, you have some guys completing their second round, other guys haven't teed off. As I say every week, if you think that the weather split will be minimal, I would like to get someone who hasn't even teed off. Scores are out there. We saw Tommy Fleetwood today. You know, he posted 66. So did Bo Hostler. So I wouldn't mind taking someone like Rose, like Ricky, who, you know, they didn't have the best rounds yesterday, but you're going to get a nice price. Obviously, Rory, he's did his thing today, you know, I don't want to say in perfect position, but he's, 2 under with a couple holes, a hole left.
Yeah, I think so.
You know, there's so much talent up top. I don't know if I want to be too aggressive. You know, we saw Keith Mitchell last week hold it down. I'm not sure that someone of that caliber is going to be able to get through all of these guys. So I would probably look to the afternoon. Ricky's the one, he kind of stands out. He putted poorly yesterday. I thought he played better than he scored. He needs a big round today, there's no doubt. But if he shoots 67, 66, he's sitting only a couple back, depending on what RCB does. 2 rounds to go. I'd like my chances at pretty long odds.
Yeah, so I was looking at Patrick Reed because he's 22 to 1. Yeah, he posted. I think he's posted already, right? He had a good round.
There's a lot of guys in that 3-4 under.
Yeah,
it's a nice spot. I don't mind. There's so much time. You don't need to be in the lead after Friday. It's nice, but you want to just be within distance that if you go out on Saturday and do what you need to do, you'll be in one of the last groups for Sunday.
Yeah, right. It's just setting up. You got to give yourself a chance, obviously, going into the weekend. That goes without saying. But, yeah, I like looking at the futures. The matchups I haven't really spent a lot of time looking at, and a lot of them, either have just gone off or are going to go off very shortly. So there's not a lot of time for people to get in on matchups, but futures, to win the tournament, certainly you have time to get a wager in on that. And those futures are always fluctuating, obviously, as players, perform and don't perform. You can see the movement and you can get some value, when players are in, like we talked about last week, versus players who haven't, been on the course yet, depending on your weather conditions. I think there's a lot more nuance. And that's something that I look for.
It's with a course like this too, there's so much water, a couple bad holes by any leader, like no lead is safe. So you can't be afraid to take someone who's a little off. And this is the concept, that we try to talk about with our evergreen stuff. When you're taking guys at massive odds, you're going to be wrong an overwhelming majority of the time. You're just trying to create some value for yourself and get in a little better position. Because, these guys, if you're 1 over right now or even and you haven't teed off, you're not in the best position. But if you can get 3-4 under, you obviously created some value for yourself. And that's really the goal of all this.
Yeah, that's always the goal with these futures. You want to put yourself in a good position, and you're going to hit on these, not that often, but you have to maximize the value when you do hit it. And again, that kind of goes towards shopping and getting the best price and getting in on a bet at the most opportune time. Like that can really make a big difference on your ROI.
Oh, for sure. No doubt about it. So I'll keep an eye on it. Obviously in Slack, we will be talking, we got a lot of golf left. Should be fun though. Hopefully the cut will break my way and we'll have some sweats for Sunday.
Yeah, that's all we can hope for. Let's hope that goes both of our ways. I wanted to touch on tennis real quickly. I know we've been going for a little while now, but obviously this week a big tournament down in Indian Wells started. It's basically the 5th major. You have the best players from both the men's and women's game, so it is really the same field that you would get at a major. The pricing, the men haven't really started. They played a little bit yesterday, but most of the top players haven't started yet. So you can still wager on futures to win the tournament, basically on guys who have not played yet. So everybody's in the same boat. On the men's side of things, it's always so top heavy. It's tough to really get any value on men's tennis. Like it's so rare that in a big tournament, somebody comes out of nowhere and wins it. I mean, you have kind of your top, obviously, Djokovic, Federer, Nadal. Out of those 3, they're the top 3 favorites. You got Zverev, who's like 11 to 1, who's been playing well. I see Federer as 5 to 1. Like you're probably not going to get much better value than that on Federer to win a tournament. He's not in the best form, I'd say, but been playing pretty well the last, 2 to 3 weeks. He won a tournament last week. Obviously you can never go wrong betting on Federer, but day to day, I think you find more value in tennis than betting, certainly on the men's side, and betting futures. Have you had a lot of success or, any tips on betting tennis futures?
No, I mean, on a macro level, I agree. It's tough because, you see someone, a lesser known player, they knock one of the big 3 off. but the tournament's not over. Then you got to go through maybe another one. It's such a tall task. So I would much rather pick and choose my spots, an individual matchup here or there. This, I'm not the biggest, which is, as I keep saying, we have some really sharp tennis people. There's an article that dropped, which I read, that helped me out. I'm not familiar with these lesser known guys. So it's nice to paint a clearer picture. Obviously, the top guys and some of the new, his name, I can't pronounce it, the Greek kid, Zverev.
Yeah.
Some guys that are obviously, they look like the next guard after maybe if Federer ever slows down, we'll never know. But in terms of a dark horse winning outright, it is a tough ask. It's hard to imagine someone getting through that gauntlet.
Yeah, that's exactly the case. Like you can have an incredible win and beat one of these top 3 players, but then you turn around 2 days later and have to do it again. Like it's brutal. Such a mental grind and obviously physical grind for somebody to come out of nowhere and win these. I think we're kind of on the same page there. Like you mentioned, something that we are going to talk about a little bit more, in the future. But we now, we've gotten into tennis content on the website. We have projections for each day. We have a couple writers doing breakdowns for DFS and also for betting. We dropped a great preview of the tournament yesterday that one of our guys wrote, a new contributor, Blaine, who you'd find in Slack. He's providing a lot of content in Slack as well. So just another reason, like you said, to get involved in our Slack channel. Everybody's always, talking about tennis matchups and futures. And like I said, I think you find the better value day to day, certainly than betting futures in tennis. On the women's side, I think you can have more luck. You certainly have more long shots win tournaments like this. But on the men's side, it's just so much harder to get through. Just the top players are just so much better.
It's true. And, again, I'm not – and this is you want to be cognizant of what you know and what you don't know. Like college basketball, I've seen all these teams play many times. There's a lot of guys in Indian Wells, especially in the earlier rounds. I have never seen them play in my life. So being able to rely on some projections and some, information from others – it's kind of how I'll approach it and pick my spots. If I see a guy and he looks very impressive, in that next round, if I think maybe a little undervalued or has a nice matchup based on his skill set, you can do that. But when you're betting a future, you don't know who the opponents are going to be down the road. Like just based on a bad draw in terms of who he may see, you may have, just an undervalued on that alone. So there's a lot of factors that go into that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard. And you can look at a draw and project it all you want, but it's still kind of hard to really determine the path. I mean, you can do it to some extent, and like you can see, like Djokovic actually has a pretty tough draw, in this tournament, and maybe that's a reason not to bet him as the favorite. I probably wouldn't bet him anyway. He's basically even money to win the tournament, so I'm not gonna do that. You could just bet on him, match to match. Certainly later in the tournament, you're not going to lay as much juice on Djokovic. So it's probably just more profitable to bet on him match to match than an even money future. But yeah, like you said, it's, we have some great resources now available on the site and in Slack. It's an area, DFS, it's starting to grow a little bit, but on the betting side, tennis is pretty big and, obviously it's international. They play almost year round. So there's going to be a lot of opportunities that we're going to, keep an eye on and certainly mention, as the show goes on.
For sure. Yeah, it's, again, I actually kind of like tennis in the sense of it's easier for me to identify what the public is going to do because I am the public. Like someone like Djokovic, he just screams overvalued because the last time I really thought about tennis, it was him dismantling Nadal in Australia. And it's like a lot of people are going to think like that and they see the odds and they say, oh, I've seen tennis, Djokovic, he's just, and it's, of course, he's playing phenomenal, but there's a lot more into it than that. So it's easy to kind of identify that. And then it's just, how do I kind of segue and crisscross to get some value where other people aren't?
Yeah, I think the recency bias is pretty strong and
definitely strong. Yeah.
Especially for the big tournaments, like nobody's following the tournaments between Australia and, a lot of people don't even know about Indian Wells, but nobody was following the tournaments, between Australia and Indian Wells. So, definitely some opportunities there. Like you said, I mean, definitely Djokovic is overvalued. I mean, that's crazy that he's even money. There's too many good players for him to be even money right now, and the way Fed's playing, and some of these young guys like have a shot to knock him off. Definitely. I mean, you have a lot of guys playing well. Again, it's hard for them to then maybe win the tournament, like take that next step. But certainly to win one match, I can see that happening.
It'll be fun. I mean, it's good to get familiar with it, and yeah, Indian Wells. If you asked me to name tennis tournaments, I could have named the 5. Indian Wells would have been the 5th. Other than that, it's true. I don't know much about it. And I think that's representative of the larger market. So it's good to kind of get that information and see where it goes.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think a lot of people may not even realize, kind of how big Indian Wells is, because it really is, people call it the 5th major, but it really is like a legitimate, like large field, basically major style tournament. And there's really not that many others throughout the world and throughout the season on the tennis circuit. Miami is pretty big. There's some international tournaments that are pretty big, but really this is the biggest one outside of the 4 majors.
There you go.
So it's something to look forward to. I'll be checking out definitely tennis this week. My plan is to go in person, which is always amazing
awesome.
To watch these guys play. It's something pretty incredible. And Indian Wells, you get access that you don't get at a major. You could literally just walk up and watch them practice. It's really cool.
Not bad. Well, keep us posted.
For sure.
That on the ground scoop.
Yeah. I'll let you know how the weather is. See how the wind is. Always important details.
Whew. Anything else before we get out of here? What do you think?
No, I'm excited. Obviously a lot going on this weekend and moving forward in March. So much, obviously, college hoops, NBA playoffs starting up. Yeah, baseball coming on. This really is a great time of year. The weather is getting better or at least theoretically getting better for everybody else in the country.
Except me. Yeah, it's still snow on the ground here, but it's warming up a bit.
All right. Well, maybe a few more weeks will get you out of that frost.
Let's hope. But yeah, no, obviously fun time. Hockey playoffs as well. We'll have all of it. But yeah, no, it's going to be fun. Obviously, if anyone has any questions, as always, hit us up on Twitter, Slack, all that good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. That's all for today. Like I said, looking forward to the weekend and next week's show. We're going to delve really deep into the big conference tournaments. And I think that'll be the majority of the show next week. Looking forward to that.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, my man. Have a great weekend.
Good luck, everyone.
See you.